call. Calling the meeting of the Human Services Committee to order. Ron Heckman's on his way. He's at a Bethlehem redevelopment meeting, and he will be here late. Other than that, do we have any courtesy of the floor? Seeing none, we have a report from the Information Referral and Emergency Services Division.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good morning.
I've been in front of you before. I just wanted to give you some updates with the Information Referral Emergency Services is Northampton County's central point of contact for folks who are looking to receive services from Northampton County Human Services, and also an information point for other community resources. We also partner with other agencies, collaborate with them to get services to those that need it. We're also the 24/7 crisis intervention piece in Northampton County, providing telephone crisis, mobile crisis, walk-in crisis at our office over in the DHS building on Emmerich Boulevard, and facilitating the involuntary commitment process for people who are in significant need of treatment and who don't want it. We also work with all the other human service divisions, helping them with the emergency piece of what they do, the after-hours processes. We recently had the opportunity to meet with some other counties. One of the things what I want to tell you about is what makes us unique, and I really didn't know how unique it was till I started talking to other counties, was we do everything in-house in Northampton County. So we do not contract out our telephone crisis services. We do not contract out our mobile crisis services. It's all provided by Northampton County caseworkers and overseen by the Department of Human Services and SUE. So I believe that helps us a lot with meeting the needs and being able to adapt to the different needs and get information to our other human services offices. One of the things that has been a growing issue that we've been dealing with is people with Alzheimer's who also had mental health issues before they needed nursing care, people in nursing homes that have mental health issues. When I started with the county years ago, if you had significant mental health issue, history of mental health hospitalizations, you weren't taken into a nursing home. You went to the state hospital. You weren't in our county nursing home, Graysdale, or the other nursing homes throughout the county. Now it's commonplace, and it's a thing that our nursing homes, our county home, and the other nursing homes in Northampton County have to face on a daily basis. People with significant mental health issues who also need nursing care and how to handle that, especially when they become there's a med issue or they become their illness overtakes them and they become difficult to handle. One of the things that our county home has done, which I've seen a tremendous change, is having a program like Haven House at Graysdale and providing not only some mental health services to the members of Graysdale, but providing support to their staff who are very good at what they do, but maybe didn't have mental health training. You know, they were trained on how to care for people in their later years and not how to identify and support someone with a significant mental illness. And I've seen over the years, over the last 2 years, we were seeing those numbers go up, the amount of commitments we were doing out at Graysdale, involuntary commitments. And since Haven House has been instituted, our calls to go there for those type of issues have decreased. The number of commitments coming out of Graysdale have decreased. So I see progress being made, which, you know, after you've been doing this a while, when you see progress, that's a good thing. So other than that, I really don't have a whole lot to say. I was here, I don't even remember.
About a year ago.
About a year ago. So we've changed a lot of it. You know, we're just still doing the same things. Our numbers are steadily increasing. Aging intakes are going up. The children and youth calls, again, are going up. Requests for services for people with intellectual disabilities and early intervention requests are going up. As you'll hear when we go through, you'll see through the whole budget process. So do you have any questions of me regarding anything that you're seeing or hearing throughout the county? Hi, how are you?
I guess the question I have, since you bring up that the aging and the children and youth referrals are going up, or they're pretty consistently high?
We'll have more again in 2019 than we did in 2018, which was significantly more than 2017.
Do you have to track your own statistics? And
Actually, we do. I am able to track them myself because all the referrals come in now through the CWIS system that Children and Youth created, and then the CAPS program that Children and Youth uses to get those referrals electronically. It's much easier, and but we've then to break out that data, instead of just giving you raw numbers, we can break out that data in this is how many specific requests for child abuse investigations there were. This is how many general protective services. This is how many law enforcement referrals. So we can actually break it out into more specific data, which tells a better story, I think.
I guess my follow-up question to that, though, is, all right, so you get the intake question and you get the immediate referral. Do you get any feedback after it's been processed? Your job is to hand it off. How do they close the gap so that it was handled?
We actually, in my office, we actually have two caseworkers. We call them CAPS screener positions. So we do get to do some, not just hand it off, but some specific assessment and casework. So when the call comes in from Children and Youth, from Childline, the referral can go several different ways. If it's a child abuse case, it's been a registered child abuse, it's going right to the child abuse units to do an investigation on. If it's a general protective services case, which doesn't fall under those specific criteria that are child abuse, then there's a few different things that can happen. If the referral doesn't meet the criteria of what Northampton County Children and Youth would look into, it can be just screened out as an information call at that level. If it is something that needs an immediate response, meaning right now, with like if we have something, a judge here at the courthouse says, I want someone from Children and Youth here right now, these two workers have the ability to respond immediately to that case and start gathering information. They can also get a call where we're not sure if Children and Youth needs to be involved because there's not enough detail in the referral. They will go out and then flesh out some of that detail to try to make that decision on what happens. And then there are cases where they just are going up to Children and Youth to do the assessment. So we have the ability to screen something out. We do not have the ability to carry a case and see how long it goes through the system and till there's a conclusion to that case.
But you feel like it's a pretty seamless handoff?
It is, yes, it's very seamless.
That's excellent. You have a question?
Yeah, I as you know, a couple of years ago when the Sandusky laws were passed, we saw a significant increase in the referrals. And since then, it appears to be continuing to rise. Aside from population growth, what do you attribute the increase in calls to?
The increase in calls is education to the reporters is primarily. I don't know that, I can't say definitively that there's more abuse or neglect or more of something taking place. I do know there's more awareness of what people are looking for, so people are a lot less, and we read every referral, so I see that. People are a lot less just to walk away from something. They could be at, a food mart shopping and see something, and now they know to make a phone call. And then the mandated reporter laws are very specific, so nobody is overlooking anything. And although we had to deal with a lot of volume of calls, and of course, we didn't get increased funding to add staff or to add programming, it's a positive, because for every if we get 500 extra referrals and 20 of those were a kid who was significantly at need or being abused or neglected, that just did its job. So I can't complain about it because I think it did what the legislature did exactly what they needed to do, was to make sure nothing gets overlooked. They threw in, they said, we're going to just be very broad stroked with it, and then the counties have to deal with it. But we're finding cases that I'm pretty certain 20 years ago we wouldn't have heard about. You know, we're getting referrals where there was a I don't know, if I'm not sure of something, I'm not going to call. You know, like, you know, a teacher may have seen something in the past and said, that doesn't quite look right, but then talked to another teacher and said, I've known that family for years. That would never be a going on. And then no call gets made. Well, now they make sure that that's not going to happen because your license is on the line if you don't make that call. So that's what I would say about the numbers. I'd say the numbers, I would say our indicated numbers, like the indicated abuse we have, I don't know that that's spiked dramatically. You know, Julie could probably talk that, but the percentage is about the same, but it's just a larger percentage because instead of 500 child abuse calls a year, you got, 2,000.
And thanks for being here again. Okay, appreciate it. With all the calls and the increases, has there been any redefinition of the types of abuse by the people that have oversight on you?
They did broaden, like with regard to, Julie's my expert back there, so you'll see me turn around.
Yeah, introduce your
Julie?
staff.
But she's
I
actually
heard
one
there
of our
were,
program
and I just thought
directors.
you had a chance to ask you, so.
Assistant administrator.
Assistant
Who is
Administrator
this?
Assistant Administrator Julie Pearson. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. I have questions about the redefinitions of some of the abuse types.
The actual number of abuses
Mhm.
with 2015 did get changed. They changed reasonable likelihood to creating a reasonable likelihood, changed the definition, changed from severe to significant. It lowered it a little bit so we can indicate if there's bruising and everything else, but it doesn't rise to near death.
So
Total
it's
impairment, they
fine
changed it a
lines.
little bit.
Okay.
They allowed us to now use doctors' records. Instead of having doctors come in, we can have doctors on the phone instead of having them in person, so it's easier for us to get the courts on appeal, get people that we need to in the courts. Definitions of general protective services, those have broadened very widely with the new laws. And then when they put the new system in, they tried to accommodate what every county in Pennsylvania was using. So there became 40 classifications, and they are narrowing that back down. So it's a broader definition, but it's
more
unified. So instead of getting like 40 allegations on a case that I have to do all the computer stuff for all 40, I might only have 4 now.
Yeah,
So that is changing, and they're revamping the 3130 regs, which is over general protective services, and they are looking to upgrade a couple of the other regs that haven't changed in 20 years.
Okay, so may I add one more part of the second part, okay? Fairness to you guys. Have you had enough time, like, these regs come down to you. Have you had enough time to adjust to them and make there's got to be paperwork that's a headache, I understand that. So are you given enough time?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. The 3130 draft came out almost 2 years ago.
Okay.
We had our chance as administrators to comment on that, and I have been going to Pennsylvania Children and Youth Administration meetings with Kevin. When the laws changed, I took over as the Child Protective Services Program person, so all those new laws were in my area. So I have been going out to those meetings with him. So for 2 years ago, we had our chance to give our recommendations for what they should be, and now it's back into, right now, they made some changes and it's back with legal at the state. So we know it's coming, we have a chance to kind of work into it. We've changed some of our practices knowing what's coming. Do we know what the final product is? No. So yes, we kind of do, and no, we kind of don't.
Okay.
Do you collaborate with other counties as well? You kind of have your own network within the state system to collaborate and kind of get a feel for
When we go to the
how?
Pennsylvania Children and Youth Administrators, the state comes out one day, all 67 counties are there for 3.
Okay.
So we have the ability to plan, and then we have our own wonderful network, a listserv that we can ask questions to. And I know other Class 3 counties, as soon as they do something, I'm like, who has this policy that I can steal? I have this one. Sometimes we'll plan who's going to do what policy, if we need new policies, and we trade off and change names. So we do work collaboratively to get it done pretty accurately.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Assistant Attorney.
Oh, what's her last name? Did you get her name? Julie?
Julie
What's your last name for the record?
Bator, B-A-T-O-R.
Is there anything else that you feel that your department needs or that you're lacking? I guess I have to, I mean, hey,
Merry Christmas.
it's Christmas in August. I didn't say we were giving it, you know,
I
it's like
mean-
mom says, what do you want for
I
Christmas?
mean, I know. I think with regards to my department, we have not changed our staffing pattern in 25 years. In fact, there was I'm trying to think who the human service director was. It might have been Mr. Heckman. We had to reduce.
He's not here to respond to that. That's
We've
fine.
had to reduce staff. There was a staff reduction that during a year, and I had to eliminate one spot, but we learned to work around that, just wearing different hats. Every single human service director will tell you, I mean, human service administrator and director, a division head will say, we need more staff. I mean, that's just, everybody could use more staff if you have the work to do. But we're by no means drowning in, I mean, we can get it done. We can get what we need to get done. I mean, would I would like to staff? Sure. But, I mean, I'm not asking.
That's an ask.
No, I'm not. No, we're handling what we need to handle. If it ever got to the point like what children and youth had with the laws, I mean, our statistics for as far as crisis intervention and our responses, our commitments, we are pretty much the same between 450 and 500 every year. You know, the call volume is up there. People will, at the end of the week, sometimes look a little different than they did when they came in on Monday. But, you know, we make it work.
Anybody else? Thank you again
Thank you
for your
very
time
much.
and all your service.
Thank you.
Report on Graysdale.
I don't have a report to hand out as it's the first and we haven't gotten any of our figures in, but I did bring Jenny Repsher with me, who is the volunteer coordinator. She used to be my secretary and she had moved on, and she's going to talk about what she does at Graysdale, being the volunteer coordinator on all the activities that we do. But I did want to bring up, we talked about many times, we have this engagement piece where our staff, when they do extra tasks, or supervisors can award them some points once they reach, it's 500 right now. The first thing they'll be getting is a Team Graysdale shirt. So that's really nice, actually. People really enjoy them because they can wear them to work. And we continue on. I sent this out. It's on Facebook. You know, come work for Graysdale and advance your nursing career. So we're still hitting home. Some of the activities that we're doing for the residents, we have our monthly ice cream truck coming. And we had Boomer come visit. He didn't get to go to the floors, but the staff was very, very excited to see him. And today is Point Click Care Live Day. So we have started our integration system. So we're live, and I'm getting the text messages. And so we have super users that are in these green shirts, and they're the team that is going out and helping all the other employees. We had people sign up left and right to be helping each other. So it's a great team to belong to. So with that, I'm going to call Jenny up and let her tell you about the volunteer.
I have one question for you. Sure. There's no mad dash breakdowns getting to the ice cream truck. Have we solved the problem so everybody's not beating themselves in the elevator to get to the ice cream? Because wasn't that last year's problem?
That was the ice cream social. We still have the ice cream truck, which parks out front of the building. And
Okay.
we have one elevator coming down and the other one going up. But
No one should get hurt for ice cream.
Well, the staff gets out there first.
Thank you. Oh,
Yeah, that's your official invitation to Family Fest.
Thank you.
That's coming up in September. That's one of our big events that we have. So those who haven't met me before, I am Jenny Repsher. I'm the volunteer coordinator over at Graysdale. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we do, first of all. When people volunteer at Graysdale, they generally help out with three main things. The first one would be providing transportation to the gyms or the beauty shops within the facility. And the more volunteers we have that can help with that, the more therapy can happen for the residents, the more residents can get their hair cut. The facility is rather large. The gyms are all located in the main building. So any residents that live in the tower building, it's quite a journey to get over there. So if we have therapy staff going over to the tower building, getting the resident, taking them over to therapy, providing the therapy, then going back and returning them to the unit, they waste a lot of time transporting. So the volunteers play a huge role in helping to transport residents to physical therapy, occupational therapy, and beauty shop appointments. We also have volunteers help out with activities and special events. For example, today we had our married couples luncheon. So all of the residents that are married, even if their spouse is not in the facility, all have received an invite to the married couples luncheon. And they RSVP'd and they came and they were served. It was chicken piccata with vegetables, and the families loved it. So that was exciting today. We have, like I said, Family Fest coming up. In the packet, there's also information on our safe trick-or-treat that we have coming up in October, and that's open to the community. I know last year we had about 150 children come through that, and the residents are stationed in various spots throughout the gardens, and the children go through and they trick-or-treat, and the residents hand out candy and cross off the little seek cards that the children have to go to each station. Another popular thing is visiting one-on-one with residents. We have veterans that come in and meet with veterans. We have just people who like to come in and chat with residents and take them outside for fresh air, especially ones who can't get out on their own. We have groups that come in and host special events. Each month we have a monthly birthday party. We have weekly church services, talent shows, and a lot of those groups are volunteers that come in. We also have visitation programs where Vision of Eagles, other church groups have adopted a floor. So they will come in and visit with residents. At Christmas time, they'll send cards, they'll bring gifts, they'll send birthday cards throughout the year. Currently, we have our junior volunteer program going on, so that runs the summertime while the students are out of school. So they apply to the program, I interview with them and the parents, so we're all on the same page of what the expectations are. I explain to them that they would be assigned any of the things that I just mentioned, any of the areas. Try not to assign them to anything they absolutely hate. One of the popular things is to paint nails. So a lot of the guys are like, I don't want to be painting nails, which is totally understandable. The junior volunteer program, it also helps the high school students learn about accountability, time management, working with each other. With the gyms, they can get pretty chaotic with the tickets for who has appointments. So they need to work with each other in making sure if there's 3 residents that need to be down there at 2:30 for meeting with different therapists, they need to work with each other to figure out who's going to get who. We have about 48 students participating this summer. And then adult volunteers, they take the summer off unless they're helping out with special events. But the transport adult volunteers take off because the students are there. There's about 20 adults who help out during the week when they are here. And I have a pool of 80 adults that I ask to help out with special events. And as an interesting fact, last year the individual volunteers provided over 13,000 hours of service to the residents. And that doesn't include the church groups, the talent shows. That's just straight up individual hours. Our upcoming special events, I mentioned Family Fest, a safe trick-or-treat coming up in October. We also have an Oktoberfest dinner in the evening in October. So it's for regular diets. We bring roughly, I think it's 120 max will fit in our dining room, and they get to all go in there. They are offered choices off of a menu. I get volunteers come in and they serve. They ask them what they want to eat. So it's kind of like a restaurant feel instead of eating on the unit or in the solariums. That they get to choose right then and there. They don't pre-pick their food ahead of time. So that's always a fun event. We also have our Holiday Bazaar and Bake Sale coming up in November. And mark your calendars for next year. The annual volunteer recognition ceremony will be April 19th. And our Health and Wellness Fair next year will be June 17th. So I not only manage the volunteers at Graysdale, Graysdale also has a gift shop. So I'm involved with that. We have 1 part-time employee in there and 4 volunteers that staff the place. It's open during the day, Monday through Friday, and every other weekend, but the volunteer department is responsible for placing all the orders for there, making sure that everything is well stocked, listening to any concerns that people have about what we're offering. They might, like, I got rid of the paydays because I had to get rid of half a box, and then there were complaints, so I was like, well, then you better buy them kind of thing, like we're going to see how it works and everything. We updated our register system in there at the end of April, so it is completely computerized. We can take credit card payments now, so that's a huge help because before we couldn't, so we can do that now. And I'm planning on meeting with maintenance to discuss some renovations in there just because there's a lot of dark wood and I'd like to get rid of that and make it a little neater with like maybe slat walls and things where you can like hang the product so it's easier to see instead of it being placed on shelves that are kind of like look like cubby holes. So I want to have discussions with maintenance and see what we can do in there to brighten it up and make it a little more cheerful for the residents. We also have a therapeutic work program where residents are recommended by either nursing or social service staff to participate. They earn a monthly stipend for completing various tasks. I have a resident who will label the menus for the other residents in the facility. I have a resident who delivers the mail and delivers the newspapers, a different resident who sorts the newspapers. When our intercom system is back up and running, we have a speaker of the house, so he makes the morning announcements, announces what the menu is for the day and the activities going on, any birthdays. So we do the therapeutic work program. And so I just wanted to talk about a couple of challenges. Like recruitment is a big challenge because a lot of people, it's hard. They don't want to commit to a set schedule. Or finding volunteers for specific purposes. For example, I've been looking for a piano player on Fridays, and I have ads out with the Volunteer Center of the Lehigh Valley. I partner with them. I'm a member of them, and we can post on their website, and then they advertise in the Morning Call and other papers, and I've had no bites for piano players. If you know anybody that plays piano and is free Friday afternoon, send them my way. You all got my card in those packets. Also, the orientation and in-service process recently changed due to federal regulations. I used to be able to orient volunteers on my own. I had like a checklist given to me by staff development, and now it's a much longer, in-depth procedure, so staff development handles that. And in-services, the volunteers complete the same in-services that the staff does. The staff does them in the computer. My volunteers are handed a packet about this thick, so I've been trying to work with staff development to get maybe a Cliff Notes version because they're coming in there because they want to be there. They want to help the residents. They're not getting paid for what they want to do. So extra paperwork is kind of a big turnoff for them. So I've been working with staff development to fix that. Like I said, I've been working with the Volunteer Center. I've been trying to attend some senior fairs to get myself out there to attract volunteers. I've also tried sending cards to recent Graysdale retirees just because a lot of the volunteers are retirees or family members. So that's another pool of people that I try to address. We also partner with Lafayette College in their Aging Studies class, and one of our perks of volunteering is you get lunch for free if you're there during the day. And that's all I got. If you have any questions? Okay.
One quick one.
Yeah.
The students, do they get public service credit
so I mean,
for
like the
that?
Bethlehem School District,
Yeah.
they require X amount of hours to graduate. So we are an approved volunteer site with the Bethlehem School District, and I have the forms that I fill out and give to them, so that way they can turn them in. Or if people sometimes need it for Honor Society. So yeah, it's community service. If they need me to write a letter, I write them a letter if they have a specific form. But yeah, it all counts towards that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else?
Jenny, on any given day, how many volunteers do we have in Graysdale?
In Graysdale, so when it's the summertime, like as far as like the transport and everything like that, that's like 12. We should do like 8 to 12. When the adults are here, there aren't as many. There's maybe like 5. And then the groups, it just varies. I mean, it honestly, because like sometimes the entertainment is paid entertainment, sometimes it's volunteer entertainment. And the group sizes could vary dramatically as well, so.
Are there any donations or things that you need? I know when I was up there for one of our last meetings, there were all kinds of like dolls and dogs and things that the residents request. Are there any things that,
So
other than service time, Are there any products or resources that you need?
So we handle the Christmas gift distribution, the volunteer department does. So we get a lot of gifts from churches that do what's called in-gathering, and so they'll give like lotions and body washes, and I mean, it sounds very like pedestrian stuff, but it's stuff that the residents appreciate because it might be scented, it might be special, you know, so it's a special kind of gift. So we get all that stuff, we sort it, we organize it, we send it to the floors. So, but like things that they could use, they love coloring books, they love puzzle books, crayons. Not crossword puzzles. No crossword puzzles. Large print books are popular. Word
Do you have a
searches.
library or book?
We
that
do
if we have books we want to donate?
We
or-
do have a library. We also have 4 computers in there, so it's like a computer room / library. Puzzles. They do. There's puzzles. They do them on their units. They do puzzles in the library as well.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you again. Thank you for everything you're doing. Director's report.
I have to keep my phone with me because our
Hello? Okay, Ron's on the phone.
we good? Okay.
I just saw the name, I thought it might be that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's why I have my phone in case my counterpart from Bucks County, John Rubin, is coming tonight, and couldn't get here till 4:30, so I don't have that long to talk. I don't have that much to say. So, unless y'all want to hear about my trip to Curacao, I don't think you do.
Well, maybe.
But we're going to head down. Hopefully he'll be here a little bit early, but if not, he had a prior commitment. In fact, the children and youth administrators are retiring in rapid succession here, and the Bucks County Children and Youth Administrator, they were having her retirement party today, and he was obviously committed to having to be there. So anyway, he's going to be here as soon as possible, and 4:30, and he has Skype just in case. And I prepared him with some of the questions and conversation that we were talking about last time, some of Mr. Heckman's questions and concerns, so that he would be able to present that information to you as he has it, and then obviously as you all have any other questions, he'll be able to either answer them or get those answers. If it's an HR type question, he can get the answers. But Kevin Dolan had sent me a civil service, non-civil service map. This was updated actually just about a year ago, and there were, 16 counties who have gotten out of civil service in Pennsylvania. There may be some more since then, but this was as of a year ago. So, and interestingly, Bucks, Berks, Monco, Chester, Lancaster, Dauphin are all out of civil service, so sort of that whole southeast part of the state. And Philadelphia is labeled as unique. It really is. It's the only orange one on the map. It's unique.
It's its own thing.
I know that with the adoption services, Philadelphia had its own system, so they just sort of marched to their own, beat of their own drummer. Kevin also sent me today, I don't know if you covered this, I was in the midst of dealing with something else at the beginning of the meeting, so hopefully it wasn't exactly what Gary and Julie were talking about. But Kevin sent me the referral numbers for this year, which we've discussed a few months ago, and how much those calls are up. But essentially, the referrals to children and youth as of the end of July, they're on pace at 333 calls ahead of last year, and last year we finished with 7,649 phone calls. So they're on a pretty good clip here. They do, interestingly, the calls do dip a bit over the summer when the kids are out of school, so less phone calls from the schools. For example, May we had 833 referrals, which was our highest month of the year, and June was 463, and July was 507. So that's a pretty big drop outside of the school year. So August will probably be fairly similar to the June and July, and then we'll see an uptick again in September. That's similar for the last few years, the trend. So, just continuing to manage that. And I know that Julie had a little bit of info she was going to share about civil service. I don't have anything else specifically since we were just here 2 weeks ago and I was out. So, if anybody, did you have any questions before Julie talks?
No, on what she said prior to civil service. The only question I have that raises for me as you speak is, you know, we hear these intake numbers and these calls, and I would be curious at some point to hear from anybody in human services, so what happens after we get these kids, these calls, and like, what services are offered to these families to try to not repeat? Because I'm sure a lot of these are repeat offenders.
Well, Julie can answer that question today for you.
But
Well, she can.
I mean, I know,
talk.
you know, it's a pie in the sky question. I realize I'm in
No.
the business a long time, but,
That's a
you
general-
know, you keep hearing they're calling.
Yep.
Well, what about these people that keep offending? Like, where's the education or where's the service piece for them? Because clearly we got to work both ends of the spectrum. I mean,
Yes.
yes, we have to refer these things and meet the need, but
No, and ultimately, my goal is to get more towards the prevention side of things and not always be reactionary, which is, it's impossible to get there 100%. It's human
I know.
beings. But that absolutely is a concerted effort we're making. But Julie can answer that, and then we can kick back to
perfect.
civil service.
Thank you.
I'll stay up here in case the civil service questions come in. I'll sit down. Go ahead, thank you.
Okay. So I'm back, and thanks. Referrals, when we get the calls, Gary explained what they do downstairs. Once they put the referrals through to come upstairs, if Gary's well, they're actually my positions in Gary's unit, so they can go out and screen those calls for the GPS. If it comes up as a CPS, our supervisor gets that. We assign cases from 8 in the morning when we get there until 4:15, and then it goes to on-call. We have 24-hour on-call. We have 3 levels of on-call. So we have Child Protective Services on call. Those are the actual numbered abuse cases. We have General Protective Services on call, which is the dirty house, the parents are using drugs, something's going on, and police are out, and we need to place kids because they're at the police station, whatever. And then we added a layer last year that we call backup, and it's to help meet the needs to make sure we're meeting all of our response times, because as we have brand new staff, we don't have enough people in seats that are fully trained to be able to do this on their own, so we added another layer. Or when the parents work and whoever we have the call on, like they're not there 8 to 5, when our workers are there, we have people that can go out at night and attempt to do this again. Our response times for the Child Protective Services, our choices are immediate, 2 hours or 24 hours. For General Protective Services, our response times are immediate, 1 day, 3 day, 5 day, up to 10 day, depending on what the allegations are and what the abuse is. If it's a teenager truancy, we're not going to give that an immediate response. That will be closer to a 10-day. We can try to get there earlier, but that's the max that we have for that. Just because it's a 10-day response doesn't mean I'm not out there in 2 days. It's just how we juggle. We get the cases, we assess the cases. So when we're meeting response times, that's meeting the victim child or identified children, depending on whether it's a general protective or child protective or general protective. And then the parents, and we're seeing the house where the child resides in that time frame. And then we keep gathering all our information and we keep doing our investigation. We offer a variety of services through our own human services department. So if they need mental health, if they need drug and alcohol, we have a drug and alcohol worker that will go out with us to the drug and alcohol to do the assessments at the house with our children and youth staff. We have early intervention referrals. So if there's just a need of the child getting additional services that are a little delayed, but we don't see any other issues in there, we'll refer to early intervention and we don't have to stay open. We will assess to see what the family needs. We will get specialized evaluations and services as needed, whether it's a psychiatric eval, a drug and alcohol evaluation. We actually brought into our building some of our visiting nurses staff that we contract with, so they can actually work with our caseworkers and review records and make recommendations to us what they might need medically for some of our kids. We had back-to-back diabetic children, and then a seizure child that just because of lack of experience with all of our new staff, the caseworker didn't realize maybe some of the medicine, even though I saw the full pill bottle, We didn't realize it wasn't filled for 2 months. So things like that that the nurses are picking up for us. So we now have staff in our house 3 days a week that we can run all the medical questions by and make referrals. The visiting nurses we contract with will go out to the house and do the medical piece. We have at least 5 or 6 in-home service providers that work with the parents to get them set up with medical assistance, anything they need through county assistance office, through parenting skills, get them rides to where they need to be, do job coaching, help them write resumes, whatever those services are, and help them get to services. If it's drug and alcohol and they don't have transportation, we'll get them bus passes, teach them how to use the bus, the whole whatever the services is. So we provide a lot of the array. If we can't vendor it out, we do it ourselves.
Can I just interrupt you to ask, so most of the services that you're talking about, are they in that GPS category? I mean, I guess.
Both.
Both. Are a lot of these
times
things
the
due
reason
to?
a child gets hurt is the parent's frustration level, and they need the same parenting skills that didn't have the injury in the other house. So it really depends. We are seeing more drug abuse, alcohol abuse. Some of our near fatalities have been lack of safe sleeping areas, or parents are passed out, leave kids in a bathtub with a needle in their arm, whatever the case may be. So some of these are, families we haven't seen before. So we're trying to do more with emergency services. Actually, 2 of us went and did EMT trainings to a couple different EMT. They realized they're mandated reporters. They thought they had to tell the hospital. They haven't been calling us. So when we were asking why we weren't getting some of the calls, that's increased some of our call volume as well. So when Gary said we're doing a better job of training, we will go wherever people ask us to go to help them understand our laws better. So we've talked to EMTs, we've talked to different agencies in the community services. So additional questions? All right, we have 60 days to do our investigation and assessment. If at the end of 60 days we think we hooked them up with enough community services, we can close the case. If we think they require additional services, we can stay involved. If at any time we think they need services and they don't want them, we can go to court and ask the court to order them. So then it's up to whatever judge.
Do you always stay open 60 days, or do you close quickly sometimes?
So it depends on the nature of the case. Sometimes we close very quickly. Sometimes you can go out twice, and if there's the allegations are there's no food and there's no clean clothes and there's no whatever, and you go into a sparkling clean house that has everything you need, we'll do our assessment questions, and if we can't find anything else, we'll do one visit and be done. There's other cases, we might be in there 2 or 3 weeks. We get the medical assistance reactivated. We help them get their referrals done, and once they made that first referral and they're back on track to getting whatever services they need, then we can close. We have other cases where we'll bring in family members to help us build a safety plan so that we don't have to place children, and either parents, aunts, uncles, whatever. We have a whole new family group decision-making unit. I believe Kevin has talked to you guys about that once before. But we have a whole unit that just engages family, helps find extended family, helps rebuild all those families that, through tough love, if you're going to keep doing drugs, I'm done, I can't help you anymore. Now that there's children involved, if we can get them back involved, sometimes that we can repair those, and they'll come in and help us so we don't have to place children. And we'll do some other type of safety plan. And the family will make their own plan, and we can get out, because the family will do what we don't have to, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It's just hard to hear. I mean, I know it, but it's just always hard to hear. So it sounds like, from what you're saying, though, a lot of times it's a poverty or lack of services or lack of medical services issue as well. Like, I hear you saying you've got to reconnect people's medical assistance, or get them rides, or getting resources sometimes.
Sometimes it's that simple. Sometimes they don't understand the system. I mean, we have people that work for us that have a hard time getting through the whole process for their own children that have special needs. So it's not an easy state and county system to get through. Medical assistance is state, but it's not 3 clicks and you're done.
Right.
So it's a process, and gathering everything you need. And if they miss one paycheck, they're cut off until we get something else back in. So if they don't have a computer and they don't have something else at home, they can't just go online and scan something over. And then if they're in a slate belt, they can't take a bus down. So it's that combination. So whatever we have to do to help them, we do.
You have a question? Oh, you just. And were you going to speak on the civil service piece as well?
I was just making sure he wasn't here yet, so.
Oh.
I do have. So, Sue had asked me, my new role in assistant administration is hiring. I got promoted November 19th. So to make a snapshot picture of what it's like to get through civil service, I got a county promotion and a civil service demotion, so I had no right of return. We were able to fill my position by January 18th. That position was a promotion, so there's a civil service 90-day right of return. We were able to fill her position on 5/5. So I had a caseworker move into the supervisor. I had a supervisor take my program director position, caseworker take the supervisor position, and currently I still have not totally backfilled my promotion because her right of return will be up next week, and we just sent the position to post.
So that's an 8-month delay? Did I count right? 8-9-month
Yeah,
delay?
that's about right. So that's one joy of civil service. Just one.
So who makes the decision? It's in the civil service code that there's a right of return for 6 months, or?
It's a 90-day right of return for every promotion. It's a 6-month probationary period for every promotion to make sure they can be certified at the next level and they can do the job. So we have a right to ask them to go back after they have a right to just say, I'm not doing this, and go back. So, and we've had a few that have gotten in a position and said, no, thank you. So that's one. We have a system that they went from U-Test at various sites throughout the state, and it was a 100-question test, to now they're doing education, experience, and training. There is a whole application process, so they have to go out and sign up for a test and explain everything that they've ever done in their life, and if they have 18 or 20 years experience, but they write down I was a caseworker here and something else here and don't have all those other steps in, they might not get approved to be a caseworker in a new state because they weren't specific enough in what they're doing. So we have a nice handy dandy chart that anybody that calls me, I will email with links to where you have to go to on the website and test. And I get calls, I probably get 2 or 3 calls a week outside of civil service that say I'm looking for a job, how do I go about to apply? The new system is very easy to understand, so easy that they now do monthly phone calls where this is what changed since last month because we're trying to get it more user-friendly. And this is just 1 month since the new system started. It's about this many of those. So it's been an ongoing fun process for that. We had a requisition go up to civil service, so we post all positions internally first per our union contract. If we have union people that want to transfer, we always interview those and transfer those first. And then if we have no internal bids, then we can go to a civil service list. So then they will post the position at civil service. They'll leave it up for 10 days so people can apply for it if they've already tested. And then they'll give us a list of names. On the not this past requisition, the one before that, I had 5 positions attached. I was given 3 names. I started calling to interview these people. One of them had already gotten a job. One of them had scheduled for an interview. Well, actually, 2 of them scheduled for an interview. The day before the interview, one of them called me back because Sue's other supervisor hired her before I got to interview her upstairs. So we're competing with all of DHS. And of the last person that was left, I did like him, and we did hire him, and he's going to start next week. So that was a good news. I asked for an additional list of names. What they told me was they don't have any more. So we went back and forth. We talked to 3 or 4 different people over there. One of them sent me, well, if you could get your people to finish their applications, we could then score them. This is what they sent me so that we could email all of those people and say, I know you were interested. This is what you need to do to finish the process. So these people want to work for us. I have 5 names. So that's my story about civil service.
Who's the they? Like,
It's, well, a lot of this has
I mean,
changed.
but like-
Well, it used to be the State Civil Service Commission.
so you're calling Harrisburg?
Yeah.
Or do we have a local office?
It's
that you-
Harrisburg, and it's all computerized, so we get to do, I do like the new computer system. as far as, you know, how they send us things and we get things and we can print them instead of waiting for them to actually send us everything. But they divided civil service into, I believe, 3 components. And don't quote me on that, because that's not my specialty, and that was all happening as Pat was leaving and I was coming in, and I'm still doing the old job and learning the new job. So there's the Office of Administration through the Department of Human Services. One section of them take the applications and tests to read for the education needs and training piece. And then somebody else takes my job descriptions, posts them up, and when they come down, they will pull names that the first part of O&A gave us. So one of them was telling me, we don't have any names. One of them was telling me, well, yes, we do. You just have to ask for a different kind of list. And this many people can't get through the system, and they don't even know how they work the system. Like, the ones that are supposed to be scoring the tests are telling us, I need to get these people scored. And I don't score them. I have nothing to do with anything other than asking for names. So we had to work some of those little kinks out. And just for the record, when we go to Pennsylvania Children and Youth Administrators meetings quarterly, Northampton's doing the best job hiring off the civil service list. So,
With one person.
well, we are better through the system than many other counties. Many other counties have not gotten names yet.
We were the first county to successfully post a job opening on the new system, and that is the
And
credit
be able
of
to hire.
Georgine
And Marianne.
Heck.
Right.
So aren't the job descriptions in civil service somewhat universal because they are civil service, or is that
The county
foolish question.
caseworker 1, county caseworker 2, for children and youth and mental health are very similar job descriptions, yes. And it's exactly the same for all 60, well, what did you say, 1654 counties that are still civil service. So those job descriptions are all the same. We did ask them to upgrade because children and youth, unlike the rest of the Department of Human Services, when we were talking with, we as the administrators in Harrisburg were talking with civil service. We train our staff. Our staff, once we bring them in the door, have to do another 120 hours of training to be certified through the University of Pittsburgh for a children, youth, Pennsylvania Child Welfare Services worker. So they have that certificate. They have the additional training to go through that. And then once we put all that time in, if there's an opening, say, upstairs in mental health, where if they knock on a door and they say, go away, we can go away. A lot of people like to go upstairs because our clients are a little more challenging, and we can't just go away, so.
and they can't pre-screen that test or that training prior to the,
No.
or they can't or they won't?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm
'Cause
not
I-
even going to try to guess.
Okay.
I didn't quite catch the
The
question.
Well, because you're saying
training
they
is
have,
in
to once
addition-
you hire them and you get them, and they have to, like, for
Well,
this
we already
position within
have to
children and
have-
youth, they have to do this training. So there's no way they can attest that they've already had the training prior to getting on the queue or getting,
Oh, like, well, they would come from
If
another
they came
county.
from another county, they can just call me and say, I want to transfer. I don't have to go through that. They've already been through that process, most likely. So I can take a transfer from any other civil service county into my county without going back through the list. So once they're certified throughout the state. It's a generic state training, and it's a pretty good one. They're actually do look at that and upgrade that every 10 or so years. But they just upgraded again. They're doing a lot more hands-on role-playing, how to de-escalate that challenging.
did you have a question now?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Back at the spring conference for CCAP, they did have a breakout session on the new system.
I heard it was going to be really good. What'd you hear?
Yeah, I guess my question is, how has it been going, and, you know, compared to what we had? Can you give us any early feedback on it? I know it's only been a short time.
What I can say, in the old way, once people took that test and got on a civil service list, they could stay on a civil service list for 2 years. And if I asked for a list from civil service, I would get the full list. We would have to start at the top and work our way down in the rule of 3. And, you know, if somebody didn't want to come in and apply or whatever, then I could move farther down the list. In one way, that was great because you had the whole list and you could just keep going as you needed to. In another way, if worker number 1 and worker number 2 was not somebody I wanted to bring in, my choice was number 3, period. And there's no working around. I couldn't move 1 or 2 farther down the list and say, no, thank you, can I have 3, 4, and 5? You have to pick out of those top 3. It didn't matter if they applied for any other position, whatever counties they wanted to work on, that's what list they went on. When we do it this way, once they have the test, every time I put positions out there, they have to apply for the positions. So if they only apply for 1 ongoing position, I can't hire them for 3 of my intake positions where I have the most vacancies. Does that make sense? So it's good, it's bad, it's...
So there, like most things, there's pluses and minuses to the new system. I guess my concern...
And I think they're still trying hard to work the kinks out, but
Yeah.
it's very frustrating.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things that I'm grappling with would be, do we want to wait a little while and see if the new system improves things, or if there's no improvement, well then, we're just wallpapering over bad system to begin with. So I don't know. I was just wondering.
We could wait and see how the system goes because they do keep making improvements. I have 11 vacancies. When we just talked about our referrals have gone up with no new staff, and then I asked for the state if we can have new staff because we have to we're writing our 2021 budget now, so this is when I'm asking for positions from 2 years from now because obviously I know everything is going to change between now and then. So we're asking for positions there now. Last year, they didn't fill half of them because we couldn't certify what half that we requested. They didn't give us any new caseworkers because we didn't have enough in the seats that we could justify what our case counts were. So while you're saying, can we wait? Sure, but then I'm still doing twice as many referrals with the same number of staff, only I have 11 vacancies because there's so much to do that everybody's so overwhelmed, they don't stay. And this year, honestly, I only had 8 walk out the door of children and youth. Sue stole 3 of them to go upstairs for other promotions. And I say that lovingly because
Sounds like an internal mediation is needed.
honestly, I'm right now enjoying it because I trained Robin when she started at the county and now she's my boss's boss. So it's good for her. And I say that, I'm just joking. We always lose staff upstairs because we are not a voluntary program. And with the exception of aging, one part of aging that does their investigations, everybody else in human services is voluntary. So when you want to really help people and they don't want you to even come on their property, it's a much different feeling every day at the end of the day. It takes a special kind of crazy to stay in here as long as Kevin or I have. So it's an interesting kind of way to go.
I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Well, I was just going to ask if we did, switch it to doing in-house, what would be the cautions or pitfalls that we should look out for or worry about?
I think Sue has researched this more than I did, so I will let her answer that.
Okay.
What I can tell you some of the pluses would be while she's walking up is instead of that 90-day right of return, right now county policy is 30. So we could have backfilled my position 3 months ago, 4 months ago, realistically, and still give people a chance to try it, but not a quarter of a year to try it. We would have to meet the same criteria. So it would still be veterans preference, it would still be merit transfer, there would still have to be some type of testing, and that would have to be HR and what they can handle. You did more of the research, so we can have that.
The list of pitfalls, I really haven't found any, which is why John is coming to talk and should be walking in momentarily. He was parking when I got up to answer that phone call. So, yep, they're coming up the elevator. But I had sent him the list of questions, and one of them was like the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I know I think Mr. Heckman's questions have been, are you going to lose money from civil service and all of those things. So that's why we figured the man of the hour,
What an
Mr.
entrance.
Jonathan Rubin from Bucks County would be able to probably answer some of those for you. So, yes, any other questions for Julie?
I had one, and that would allow them to get a little quick break and stretch if they need to, since they just really jumped out of the car. And the only question I have is, what's a general length of stay of a caseworker position? 1, 2, or 3, like ballpark? Without the special level of crazy, what do you think the burnout level is?
When I was going to my caseworker certification training, they used to say that the average length of a caseworker at that point in time was 9 months in children and youth, and it has gone down since 2015 with the new laws. I don't know the exact time frame now, but it has gone down since the training of new laws. So it's less than 9 months, and it takes almost 3 months to finish the training, so some of them make it that long. Anything else?
Timing was
Okay,
perfect.
boss.
I owe you.
No, thank you for everything. That's good.
Thank you. So I have John Rubin from Bucks County. He is my counterpart. He's the Director of Human Services down there. Actually, it's Director of Housing and Human Services. So we don't totally separate it. We just sort of lump housing in there. So anyway, I asked John to come and give you guys a short presentation and then answer any questions you might have. So I'll turn it over to you and have a seat. Thank you.
So good afternoon. I think I'm not late.
No, thank you
Oh,
very
you're good.
much for coming. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to really just answer the questions that you have. Sue had asked me to talk about the Bucks County experience of going to a merit hire process out of civil service. And she had sent me some questions, so I can just sort of go through them one at a time. But if you have questions as I go, that's fine. Again, I'm the Human Services Director, so I oversee child welfare, mental health, and area agency on aging, and those are the 3 departments that were really most affected by the pull out of civil service in the county. It's really the whole group. It's about 280 staff in Bucks County that fit into that category. So the first question I had was, did we have to hire any additional HR staff? And we in Bucks County did not. I will give a caveat that all the counties are different. I don't have to tell you that. So I don't know exactly your structure, so I'm not saying you wouldn't have to. But in the Bucks County, we didn't. That the HR department was able to really absorb the work, and I can articulate a little bit more what that was. But we did not hire any additional staff, and we didn't incur any outside costs from the change. We also didn't lose any state funding. I know that was one of the questions, and that was like one of the rumors, right? Like if we did this, are we going to lose state funding? And it really hasn't come to be that way. The risk, I guess, of losing state funding, the things folks were concerned about were that if we had an audit from the state and they felt we had mishandled a hire or something like that, that they wouldn't fund the position. We've been out for about 3 years, and it's never happened. We've had our audits and what have you. I wouldn't say it could never happen in the future. I suppose that would be the risk, but we have not lost funding or incurred additional costs from the experience. How long did it take to leave civil service once we applied? And I can tell you it's a pretty arduous process. I met with our HR deputy director who helped lead the county through the process before coming here. I met with her the other day, and she said in her mind it took close to 2 years. She went back through, and basically the way she defined it was it took 8 versions. Like we would send our merit hire policy to civil service. They would take like a month or 2, and then they would get back to us with feedback and recommended changes, and then we would make those in a pretty short order, a couple days. And send it back to civil service, and it would take another month or 2 for them to get back to us on their comments. So it may be different now. It's been a couple of years. I would hope that their process is a little smoother, but it was certainly more than a year, and as she put it in the context of really 8 revisions through that, probably like a 2-month process for each revision.
Okay. Real quick on that question, if you don't mind. So if we entered into that process of going through it, was there a way to stop, like just, for example, kind of telling your question, if the state's new program made sense and it fixed a lot of the concerns we had, can you then stop opting out of it?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe you can. And again,
So it would make sense to start it, and because it would take so long. And
yeah, that's one way to look at it. I think at the end of the day, there becomes a decision, yes, you are now out, and I feel comfortable telling you, although I'm not the expert, but I would feel comfortable telling you I think we could have at any point stopped the process. Yeah. And really, Sue asked me to come up with what were some of the downsides to being out of civil service and the benefits. So let me go through some of the downsides with you, and then I'll let you know that I have some benefits so that you're not only hearing some downsides. So this is not so much of a downside, but a concern that was raised by staff is that they felt that they were going to lose their civil service protection, if you're familiar with that, so that if there's non-union staff, and there were some that felt like the civil service provided them some protection. But I will tell you that the merit hire process, going through this with the state, required us, and I would imagine it would require you to come up with what was called an alternate dispute resolution process. So we have a multi-step, 5-step process, and I brought our merit hire manual with us if anybody needed to see it, or I could leave it with Sue, but basically defines that alternate dispute process so that a worker can feel protected knowing that what they would have gotten from civil service protections, they would still be getting through the county through this alternate dispute process, which in essence allows for a neutral third party to hear any concerns if they felt like they were being disciplined unfairly. What I guess I would call a downside is that position changes are still reviewed and approved by the state. I mean, it's not that it's completely now autonomous at the county level. If we're making significant changes to positions, we still run them through the State Civil Service Commission. It's a little bit of a different process, and in fact, my mental health director felt like this is a bit of a downside because now there's really a 2-step process where it was just really dealing with civil service before. We were sending it through to the Department of Human Services to get changes approved, and we still then have to make sure that our HR, our Human Resources Department, approves it. So there is still some contact with the state, and they're still approving significant position changes.
So under what circumstances would that occur?
I think if you're significantly changing job descriptions, that those.
So
those
in
need
the
to
event
be,
that somebody would rework an entire department or add a new position, but all the stuff that we were just speaking about when you came in, the caseworker 1, the caseworker 2, the general things that are
right.
common across the board would not need that kind of
Correct.
scrutiny.
Yes, you're right. So, and again, I'm talking about significant changes to job descriptions, yeah, or creating a new role that didn't exist before. Yeah. Again, not necessarily a downside because I think it leads to a good side, but it does require a pretty significant effort towards organization, maintaining records, and maintaining consistency. I mean, we are prepared for an audit. We are prepared to be able to show how we went through a screening process. So our HR had to develop a lot of tools for when we're screening applicants, when you're choosing resumes, how did you choose the people to interview? When the people were interviewed, was a scorecard kept so that we have notes and how were, say, a finalists chosen over an initial group of folks that were interviewed. So there is a significant workload around creating the mechanism for the merit hire process that requires a certain amount of creation of that and then fidelity to that and organization around it. So that does take a fair amount of time. I think when I get to the benefits, in many ways it's benefited us that our Human Resources Department is that organized and that structured, but it instead of just getting the list from civil service, all that front-end work is done by our Human Resources Department, and they really had to plan and organize, but besides the workload of the interviewing, create a lot of documents and forms to be prepared for an audit. And again, I have examples of those that I can leave with Sue, but to share with you, we have a lot of, again, the interview screening forms and basically preparing for an audit form that if an audit came at any time, we'd be ready today for all the interviews that we've done. And basically just, to say to you, there are still a lot of requirements from the Department of Human Services. Like there's still some oversight. This is not really a completely autonomous process. But that said, we did find, and again, I spoke to my department heads in preparation for today. I spoke to our Human Resources Office, and the general consensus is it was very positive overall for the county. And the primary reason, if I was going to boil it, if you said, give me, what's the main reason for that? And that really is the elimination of that civil service test, of that barrier to application. Everybody said that they felt we are getting a much better group of applicants, that the barriers to applying for positions have really been lowered. You know, the bar, I guess barrier is the right word, to entry into our employment at the county has really been much easier to get applications. And so we're finding that a lot of folks who worked or who work at like our provider agencies for our child welfare department, they are applying for county jobs when they might not have if they had to go to Philadelphia and take a civil service test or what have you. Again, I imagine you've gotten a lot of the background about, you know, what it means to pull out, so I won't belabor that point. But HR really felt like we were getting a much better applicant pool. So not just that we have more freedom to choose from the applicant pool, but the applicant pool itself is much stronger, much more familiar with the work that we do, much more connected to our county human services and the population in the county. They reported a significant change just in sort of talking with me these last week around like the excitement of employees coming. Like they just said that it feels like a different group of people that are applying for jobs and accepting jobs and coming in much more excited. HR also talked with us about really having a benefit of what they felt was a much more professional first round of interviews, because they are doing the first round of interviews versus, again, just the 3 applicants going to the department. And they have worked closely with the departments around behavioral interviewing techniques, and this has really raised the, I think, the quality of our interview process. And again, we have a whole manual now around behavioral interviewing that all of our departments have been trained on. So I think the actual process of selecting the candidates is better than it was before, just out of naturally because we had to do it ourselves. The other point I'll bring it back to earlier, I mentioned to you that we have a lot more tracking of information than we did before with the applicants, and that has now allowed us to gather a lot more data than we had before. So now we know when somebody applies. We know the length of time between when somebody applies and when they're hired. We know, are people applying because of an ad in the paper or because of a friend, because now we are collecting all that data and we are tracking it now. And again, I brought for Sue, again, just a brief chart to show how we're tracking it, and so we can continuously improve our process because we have a lot more data about how people are finding us, applying for jobs, and going through our process. And then as the Human Services Director, and this is really my last point, it has allowed that data then be translated to me. I will tell you that not long after we started, we got a little bit of issues, complaints between our HR and our county departments because they felt like HR felt like they were going through a great process and getting us people very quickly. And then it was held up at the department level because we were using county staff who have other jobs to do our interviews and things. And it took them a while to schedule and plan and have it. And so they'd get us a name in 10 days or 2 weeks, and then it would be 2 months later and they weren't hired. So now I get a monthly report from HR whenever they've, on every open position in human services. And we track it. Like I know when HR sends it, so I know the status of each position. Is this something that the department has that HR sent 3 weeks ago? And then I can talk to the child welfare director or mental health director and say, where are we with this or what have you. We just have much better internal tracking mechanisms than we had before about our hiring process. So generally speaking, the hiring process is a lot better. We're getting better candidates, and we feel like our employee pool is improving as a result. And that benefit is worth those downsides of that extra work and tracking.
We were just talking before you came in about the fact that staff don't stay. Do you feel like their length of stay has increased as a result of the improvement on the hiring end?
I think it's a little early for me to make sort of a broad statement, but I'll tell you that our turnover rate is about 10% in child welfare and 7% for human services. That's data I got from this past year. So I think that's fairly low in general.
That's good. Ours, I don't know what it is. You can't answer that now, can you? No, but at one point, I think the year before I got here, it was 25% improvement.
So children and youth is a little bit of a different animal in the sense of, if you recall, when the laws changed a couple of years ago, there was a lot of stress on the system. we experienced twice as many reports as we had, from 2014 to 2015, and we had a lot of turnover in 15, 16, 17. A lot of that has settled down now. So it's hard to, again, give you a data-informed judgment, but yes, I believe, our turnover is, our staff is more stable. It feels that way.
And you said this is 2 years that you're into the process?
It was actually 2016, end of 2016, so almost 3 years, yeah.
Other questions from you?
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm not on the committee.
Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, I just laughed.
I wouldn't have known that.
I'll wait till the committee.
I'm just curious about legal liabilities, things of that nature. What have you experienced in you've done? You've created a separate program, so what has happened with the legal part of it?
Well, I'm not aware of any changes. Like I'll say to you that I didn't ask those questions before coming in preparation for this, so I'll apologize for that. But just as the Human Service Director, I can tell you that we've had our occasional legal challenges. Most of them are related to union, not civil service. We really haven't experienced this alternate dispute process at all. Most of these positions are union positions, and really any situations we've had about disputes have been from the union. And I, as a Human Service Director, haven't seen any changes.
Just one more, just follow up on that. You've been doing this for almost 3 years now. The acceptance from the civil, are you getting pushback from any of the civil service programs? When you do your program, are you getting any input back from anyone?
It's all been positive. It's all
Good.
been, again, I think dealing with the Civil Service Commission at the state level was pulling teeth throughout the process, but now that we are in it and approved, I don't think we've had any problems. We haven't experienced it. And just in preparing for this, talking to my department heads, they all felt it was positive.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Did you have to rehire or reclassify then, because you had already hired these people under civil service? So the staff that were already there, did you have to transition them over, or?
We did go through our county salary board and changed. We did make some changes, I think, but this was in agreement with the Civil Service Commission as we were looking at positions. I know, like, we had a lot of positions like where there were like a clerk typist 2 and a clerk typist 3. There was no clerk typist 1. Like we right-sized the manning table. I guess I'd put it to you that way. There were position changes that were just, I don't think cosmetic is the right word, but if you know what I mean, like to sort of fix some things that were found through the process. But again, I think that was, again, a process that we went through, and it's not a continuous process. Once it got right-sized, we haven't had to continuously make changes.
Okay. Ron, and then Bill.
Thank you for coming up. Up county.
It's a nice drive. It was a good day.
Yeah, I thought. It was already touched on, but I want to ask you, did you have to, when you decided to do this, because as you mentioned, these are primarily union positions, what was the union's take on this? Did they feel you had to renegotiate anything? Did you have to sign any letters of agreement with the union?
Yeah, again, I'll apologize in the sense that, so I didn't have to experience any of that. I can tell you that we didn't have, if I just think back, I've been the Human Service Director for 5 years, so I was the Human Service Director through this process. I don't recall a single time of there were no union grievances over it. There was no, we had no contractual issues through any of our recent, all of our unions are under contract, and it's never, I would imagine there were conversations. I wouldn't be, it'd be naive to think there weren't, right?
Yeah, I agree.
But it was never felt like a insurmountable hill or a problem. It was, and like most places, we have our, disagreements with the union sometimes.
Yeah.
But
specifically related to this.
I'm saying this was not one of them. This
Right.
was not something that.
The other question I had was the applicants. You mentioned about requirements, and the state still has oversight to a degree, and they have basic requirements. So when you put out the job description, is the job description the same as it was when it was still state civil service in terms of what's needed by the applicant, experience, education, and so forth?
What the state wants, in my experience, is they want to make sure that we are meeting whatever their minimum, meeting or exceeding their minimum requirements. In other words, they don't want us to take a certain level job and make it less than what their previous requirements were. They have not micromanaged duties, in my experience, that if we said this, like a social worker job, they want to make sure it has the proper educational or work experience, but if we said that they have to do this or that, they haven't micromanaged the language of the duties. It's really about the experience and qualifications.
So did you, though, probably mirrored, I would think that you probably, like, let's say a caseworker, and the civil service has the requirements and all that. I would guess when you took on this, when you wrote up, now the county's going to write up the job description, which has to be approved by civil service, correct?
Approved, again, but I think they're approving the minimum qualifications and experience, they're not so much.
But, all right, so there's a minimum, but then you probably used the standard application as a basis, and you could go from there. You couldn't go less than that, but you could certainly add to it if you wanted to.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, and the only other, I have a few, but as we go through, I'll have more questions, because it sounds great, and I appreciate that. It's just, it is a change, and everybody will have to get used to it. The application pool is greater, and you said that, well, they don't have to go to Philly, because I know way back in my past, I went to Philadelphia. But when they come in then to the county, and I'm assuming that the county HR department has scheduled tests, and folks come in, and you're not really then held to the 3 top scores. They can interview as many people as they want. Is that correct?
That's correct. And
they can hire anybody they want.
And for positions, we don't necessarily have a test.
Oh.
So again, it depends on the positions. If there may be a clerk typist, that there's a typing test. There may be certain positions, but I don't believe we have a test for, say, child welfare, social workers, caseworkers. I think we've eliminated that.
Well, let me ask you that then, because, and I'm sorry, but I just want to get a good understanding, so just if you would bear with me. I know you said with the state civil service and everything's calm. I know how the departmental areas, though, can get kind of tricky, and I'm sure you've run into that. It's like you have, mental health, children and youth, and they're their own little kingdoms in Harrisburg, and they're not good at giving up their oversight and control. Let's say you write up something for children and youth and a caseworker. Have you had any feedback from them, positive or negative, in terms of saying, well, we think in child welfare, yeah, you're off civil service, but we think you're watering down what somebody should have in terms of requirements to be a children and youth caseworker?
So my understanding, again, and I'm not involved in so much the operational piece of that, is that they really have not focused much on that type of duty as much, as long as we were maintaining minimum level of requirements, educational background and experience.
Okay. Well, I guess then a good question, Madam Chairwoman, would be to talk to, if possible, the HR person, because I think a lot of these questions aren't so much human services as HR, because as director, I mean, it sounds like everything at your county funnels through HR, and then it comes to you. I mean, you may have a grievance, like every director gets grievances, but a lot of this changeover happened with HR.
They had
right here. I'm sorry, John. So the personnel committee meeting, I think, is where we decided that Liz would come from an HR perspective and go through all of that part of the presentation.
So we're not going to get an HR person who's gone through it? I'm just asking.
We could certainly, if Mr. McGee is amenable, invite them to the personnel meeting, or we could do that later next month.
It's not about Ms. Kelly. I'm sure she's researched it. I'm just saying, like most of the questions, and I respect, as a former human services director, his end of it, and he's explained to me part of it. But part of it is really answers from an HR director, because in their situation, HR is handling most of this.
Mr. President, and maybe Mr. Rubin can help us. Thank you for coming, by the way. I mean, what a wonderful thing for you to do for us, and you certainly didn't have to. Thank you so much. We'll endeavor to have an HR director, maybe from Bucks County, if you could put a good word in for us, to come here.
Yeah, to invite him. I mean,
to
we
come
can't
here
force
and
him.
answer your HR questions. Okay.
I think it would be helpful.
Thank
That's
you.
just from my perspective. Thank you.
I mean, I'll answer the best I can. I did
I-
meet
and
with
you have- no, no.
HR to prepare for this.
I think what you showed, I mean, I think you would agree, benefits, negatives, benefits aside, at the beginning, it was probably a complicated process because you had to be sure you got it right. Civil service had to be sure they were happy. Your folks were happy. Your union was happy. So I understand you had a lot of pressures before this even started because everybody had to be on the same page.
Right.
And I think that from what you're saying, excuse me, I could see that where HR has had a big role in this to make sure this thing rolled out smoothly.
Right.
So that's my only reason for that.
And I will say, and obviously you'll get the detail that you want. In meeting with HR and in preparing for today, they were very positive about it. They felt, even though the workload was borne by them very much,
Yeah.
again, they feel the benefits to the county. Speaking for HR.
Oh, can I ask one last question?
Wait,
Just
I have one. So did you, in your preparation to do this, did you have anybody that you looked at their county model and relied on? Or did you create this yourself along with the state and civil service? Or did you see that somebody else had done this transition and patterned after
So
that?
I was aware that others had done the transition, but my understanding is that, again, what civil service doesn't want you to do is take another county's policy and just say, this is now our policy. Like, I don't think you would be able, if I
Because
could give you
everybody
my
would
manual,
deflect.
but if you crossed out Bucks and wrote Northampton, they would not approve it in that way. So we took it very much as this would be something that we would be doing and working through, and that, as you might have heard, if you've seen one county, you've seen one county, right? All the counties are different, but we I think maybe were early adopters, but we weren't the first. And I had heard from other counties. My first recollection was Berks County, were maybe the first ones that I had heard of had done this, and that they had felt it was worthwhile.
Can I finish my?
If we can get a list of Mr. Heckman's HR questions.
I don't have a list.
No, I don't mean right this minute. I mean, in lieu of having other folks from other counties.
Is there a problem asking? I mean, if they don't come, I mean, I'm not going to say, oh, I refuse to consider
No, I
this.
think where she's going is that we had discussed a few questions so that I could have him sort of pre-research before
I
he
don't always
came.
pre-think all this stuff. I'm sorry. I just don't. I mean, sometimes based on what they say, I have a question. I mean, this gentleman's discussion gave me questions. I may not have thought of that question.
We're happy to.
That's fine.
I'm certainly happy to go back. I just wanted to.
It is easier to pre-package, I get it. But, I mean, I think,
But I'm happy to go back now if you want to also send me follow-up questions. I'm certainly happy to have a conversation with Mr. Rubin and his HR folks to get your answers, so you don't even have to wait. That was.
I can wait. We're not doing this tomorrow, are we, Mr. Executive?
Mr. Werner.
Mr. Rubin, I want to, it's going to take more than
But, I mean, we're not signing any papers tomorrow.
No.
So, okay, well.
Mr. Rubin,
I still have a
wanted
question,
to-
Madam
I wanted to
Chairman, from my
thank you
time
for-
I had.
I wanted to thank you for being here, for coming from Bucks County and offering free consultative information.
Free? Wait, I missed the free. Yeah.
The operative word being free consultative information and data. And I absolutely hope you will join us again at a later date to help. This, I believe, the majority of the council has few questions, but they're heading in that direction. And you have given us some inspiration to that. So I just wanted you to know we appreciated you being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Heckman, if you would like
The
to.
last question I had was the pay scale. A lot of our reasons our children and youth people have turnover over the years, as they've said, I get paid the same as a caseworker in this field or that field, and my stress levels are so much higher. When you do this, are you in a position to be flexible with who you pay regarding what you pay regarding where they work? For example, could you pay a children and youth caseworker coming in the door more than, let's say, an aging caseworker? And if you do that, do you have rules on transfers? Because what we've done is often people will get to a certain point and then they'll say, I want to transfer. If we gave more money to somebody in CYF, and in about 3 years, they transfer, and they want to take that wage with them. And that would always be a bit of a bone of contention.
So those are pretty much typically determined by the union. These are all union shops, and so they
Right.
all have steps. You know, you come in at a certain level, you get an annual increase and steps along the way. So the changing the merit didn't really change the adaptability or the flexibility around salaries. Those are all union negotiated for aging, mental health, and child welfare.
Okay. I do appreciate you coming up and answering the questions.
No, I appreciate that you're all considering this, and I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
Mr. McGee?
Sure, yeah.
Most of my questions were answered. The one was the testing, and I guess that's more about human resources. But
Mr. McGee, civil service eliminated what we think of as the testing, and now it's just based on education and experience and training. So it used to be a test, and now they call it a test, but it's basically reviewing your resume.
Okay.
That will not
Okay.
change in or out of civil service. Civil service already changed that.
Okay, yeah, because I thought maybe since we had the county has to take it over, then there's some kind of test. But he mentioned if there's a typing test or something like that.
If you put it into a code. I think the biggest change is really that rule of three being limited to the three names that you get from civil service, and again, opening up the applicant pool.
The only other thing, when you change a job description, so the county approves it, then sends it off to the state for their approval?
Yeah.
Okay, and they're pretty responsive on it?
Yep.
Great, so it's just another step, but they're responsive. It's not like the initial application that takes so long.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming out, appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you again
All right,
so much.
Thank you, and I'll be happy to offer to come back, and I'm happy to offer connections to our HR department.
Right, we have to adjourn for the finance meeting. Do we need to take 5 minutes, or? All right, I'd like to take 5 anyway. So, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
The county executive, thank you so much for being up here with us today. It's really, really
Good luck with that. So I couldn't answer every question.
No,
didn't.
I think you really advanced the cause of justice here today.